We are not intimidated by Russia, and that's why we are making decisions to support Ukraine and to counter Russia and to sanction Russia. And we think this is fair, that the revenues of those frozen assets will be used for Ukraine, for the Ukraine, because they are victims of this war of aggression launched by Russia.
This is my video update on this Monday, midday, March the 25th. Happy Independence Day to Greece and to all the Greeks around the world. March 25th, Greek Independence Day. So let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with the 4 terrorists who over the weekend were taken to a Moscow court, and they were charged, according to TASS. They were charged with Russia's terrorist act for alleged involvement in the Crocus City Hall terrorist attack. And the maximum penalty, according to TASS News, is life imprisonment. Though Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov was asked about whether the Russian government, the Putin administration, would bring back the death penalty. From what I understand, Russia doesn't have a death penalty. But I believe there is a provision in Russian law which does allow the president, under certain circumstances, to enact the death penalty. I could be wrong about this. People who are watching this video who understand Russian law better than I do, let me know in the comments down below if this is indeed the case, if the Russian president can enact the death penalty in special circumstances. But Peskov was asked about the death penalty with these terrorists, and Peskov said that right now there's an investigation going on, but he didn't rule it out. He did not rule it out. Medvedev was asked about the interrogation of these 4 terrorists, and Medvedev, and I'm paraphrasing what Medvedev said, he said that these guys have been caught. They're being interrogated, and they're going to face the maximum penalty. But Medvedev also made it a point to say that the main goal of the investigation is to get to the people and to punish the people that gave the orders, that are above these 4 terrorists. Medvedev said that that's who the Russian state is going to go after, are the people or the entities that actually gave the orders to these 4 terrorists. So that was the comment from Medvedev. And at this moment in time, it's absolutely clear that the Russian government is hinting at Ukraine or certain entities or institutions or maybe even people in Ukraine that were behind this terrorist attack. And the collective West, one of their main narratives is to say that Ukraine is not behind these terrorist attacks. The collective West has 3 narratives right now that they're pushing. The first narrative is that this was a terrorist attack done by ISIS-K. The other narrative is that Ukraine is not behind this terrorist attack, though Russia is trying to link Ukraine. And the other narrative that the collective West is pushing very hard is that Putin messed up. Putin did not heed the warnings of the U.S. government with the alert that it put out on March 7th. He ignored the terror attack alert from the U.S. government. Those are the 3 narratives that the collective West media and collective West leadership, that they're pushing out there very, very hard. They're really pushing these narratives. From the Russian side of things, they're saying that the investigation is ongoing, but there's no doubt that they're hinting at all roads leading to some sort of a Ukrainian involvement. That seems to be where they're going with this, but we'll wait for the results of the investigation. The Russian Foreign Ministry, they put out a statement, and they also said that most likely this is going to lead to Kiev. Actually, let me find you The statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova: after the Crocus City Hall attack, the U.S. tries to bail Ukraine out by mentioning the IS terror group outlawed in Russia and to cover itself and the Zelensky regime it created. So that's the statement from the foreign ministry, and that absolutely points to Ukraine. That's where it appears. That's where it appears Russia is going to go with this investigation. But the four terrorists, they were brought to a Moscow court. A lot of images, a lot of photos of these guys. They were in pretty bad shape, roughed up. I imagine they were roughed up by the Russian authorities, even though some of the terrorists, they got roughed up because they fell from like a tree. They were trying to run away from the Russian authorities, and one guy actually climbed a tree and fell down from the tree. So he was in pretty bad shape. But a lot of people on the interwebs, on social media, anti-Russian, anti-Putin commentators, social media users, they're commenting on the fact that these four terrorists are in bad shape, are beaten up after they saw the images from the Moscow court, and they're clutching their pearls, saying, "Oh my God, why did Russia beat them up? How could the Russian authorities beat these four guys up? This is against human rights and international law, and how dare Russia do this?" Look, my take on this is that the Russian authorities, if they didn't want these images to be seen, they would have not allowed these images to be broadcast on the interwebs. So for me, the Russian authorities, they want these images to go out there of these guys, who looked like they were roughed up. There's no doubt about it. They want these images to be broadcast because the Russian authorities, in my opinion, are sending a message out there, which is if you commit an act of terrorism against the citizens of Russia, if you kill women and children and civilians in Russia, we're going to catch you and we're going to F you up. I think that's the message that they're trying to put out there. And they're not trying to hide it, which I think makes the images that we saw of the terrorists in court different than, say, something like Abu Ghraib, where Abu Ghraib, they were abusing these prisoners, and they were taking photos of the abuse of these prisoners, but they were trying to cover it up. They didn't want these photos leaked. There was a cover-up there because they didn't want to show. They didn't want this abuse to be shown to the world. In this instance, the Russian authorities are like, yeah, here they are. Here are the terrorists. They're in bad shape. They're in court. This is a message to all the terrorists who are thinking of doing harm to Russia and to the people of Russia. I don't know. That's my take on this. But the reports are that these four terrorists, that two of them were in Turkey, and that's where they got their instructions, their orders from their trip to Turkey. One of the terrorists actually posted photos on Instagram of his visit to Turkey, and then they got their orders or the plans while they were in Turkey, and they traveled back to Russia, and that's when they got in contact with the other two terrorists. One of the terrorists, 32 years old, he was an illegal immigrant from Tajikistan, and he overstayed his work visa. Father of 4 young children. Another terrorist was allegedly born in Tajikistan, and he was living in Moscow. The third terrorist was born in Tajikistan. He was a factory worker, a father of an eight-month-old baby. And the final terrorist, the guy that was brought in on the wheelchair, brought into the court on the wheelchair. I believe he was living in Moscow, though this report doesn't say, but he was a hairdresser. And he was the terrorist that claimed that during the court hearing, that claimed that he didn't speak Russian, which is laughable. He was living and working, I imagine, in Russia as a hairdresser, and he claims that he doesn't speak Russian now. Anyway, that's the updates on these four terrorists. I'm sure everyone saw the photos and images from when they were brought into a Russian court. The Washington Post, they put out an article yesterday with the title, Terrorist Attack in Russia Exposes Vulnerabilities of Putin's Regime. Despite Putin's rhetoric seeking to implicate Ukraine, analysts, former U.S. security officials, and members of the Russian elite, whatever that means, said the assault underscored the vulnerabilities of Putin's wartime regime, which were also evident when Prigozhin led his Wagner mercenaries in a brief mutiny aiming to oust top defense officials in June. I wonder who the Russian elite in this Washington Post article, who these guys are. Are they talking about people like Kasparov and these guys? I don't know. But yeah, they're trying to draw a comparison between what happened with Prigozhin and Wagner and this terrorist attack to showcase that the Putin government and Putin himself is vulnerable and weak. Ripe for a regime change, huh? I said this in my video yesterday, that the collective West media, they're going to try and use this horrific terrorist attack to talk up regime change once again, and that is exactly what they're doing. And they're now pushing out the narrative that this highlights that Putin is weak, just like they did with Prigozhin and Wagner. Putin is weak. This shows that Putin is weak. Now is the time to strike. Now is the time to try and get regime change in Russia, because Putin is vulnerable and weak. That's what this Washington Post article is basically talking about. On the one hand, the one narrative from the collective West is that Putin is all-powerful and all-knowing. He has a monopoly on the internet troll business. He controls the U.S. elections. He controls Trump. He controls the America First populist movement. He controls alternative media. He's all-powerful, all-knowing. On the other hand, the other narrative about Putin is that he's vulnerable and weak and incompetent, and he needs to be regime changed. Anyway, that's the article from the Washington Post. I imagine we're going to be getting a lot of articles, just like with the Prigozhin mutiny and everything that happened with Prigozhin. I imagine we're going to get a lot of articles now talking about Putin's weakness and Putin's vulnerability, and how Putin ignored the warnings from the United States, or the warning, not even the warnings, from what we know right now, the warning in the form of a post on a U.S. government website and a post on social media about some sort of an attack happening in public venues and at concerts on March 7th. So we're going to get a lot of articles now talking about how Putin ignored that warning, and that means that Putin and his government is weak and vulnerable, and this could signal that a regime change is possible. It's always about regime change. Everything always goes back to regime change of Putin. No matter what it is, it always goes back to regime changing Russian President Putin. So a lot of people yesterday are talking about Mark Milley's comments that he made, according to a Washington Post article from a year ago. There was a lot of comments about Nuland's, a lot of talk about Nuland's nasty surprise comment, and how that may have signaled some sort of, or that may have had some sort of connection to the events that happened in Moscow. But yesterday, social media, they they dug up a Washington Post article from, from December 4th, 2023, with the title Miscalculations, Divisions Marked Offensive Planning by U.S. Ukraine. And this article was highlighted because it talks about how Mark Milley said that that what needs to happen is that Russians need to feel terror and pain. That should be part of the overall strategy of this conflict. Actually, let me just read you the part which talks about the comment that Mark Milley, who at the time was the general heading up the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's since resigned. He stepped down, but this is what he said, according to the Washington Post. During one visit to Wiesbaden in Germany, Milley spoke with Ukrainian Special Operations troops who were working with American Green Berets in the hope of inspiring them ahead of operations in enemy-controlled areas. Quote, there should be no Russians who goes to sleep without wondering if they're going to get their throat slit in the middle of the night, Milley said, according to an official with knowledge of the event. You got to get back there and create a campaign behind the lines. I think that's the key part of Milley's statement that people should be focusing on. I know that the first part of his statement about the throats of Russians, I mean, that's disgusting and provocative. That's quite a disgusting statement from Milley. But the part that really has me thinking is his quote where he said, you got to get back there and create a campaign behind the lines. I imagine what he means, well, definitely what he means is you got to create terror in Russia, in Russian territory. So a lot of people are now talking about that comment from Milley. France, they have raised their terror alert following the attack in Moscow. The French president has convened a meeting on the National Defense and Security Council this evening. French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal wrote on Twitter X, in light of the Islamic State's claim that it was responsible for the attack and the threats looming over our country, we have decided to raise the BITCHUTE plan to the highest level, the Prime Minister added. So I believe France is the first and, as of today, the only country that has raised their terror alert following this attack, this terrorist attack in Moscow. And the New York Times is reporting that France is very worried about the Paris Olympics. The New York Times, they ran an article with the title, ISIS affiliate linked to Moscow attack has global ambitions. The terrorist attack in Moscow's Crocus City Hall has raised concerns among Western officials that the next terrorist attack could occur during the Olympic Games in Paris. Counterterrorism experts are concerned that the ISIS Khorasan cell linked in the West to the attacks in Moscow and Iran could redouble its efforts to strike Europe, especially France, Belgium, Britain, and other countries that have been attacked over the past few years, the past last decade. That's what the New York Times is reporting. And just a couple of weeks ago, the narrative was that ISIS was defeated. Trump campaigns on the ISIS is defeated narrative. I defeated ISIS, he says. And now you have ISIS K. It's not even ISIS, it's ISIS K. And I don't even know, I have to be honest with everyone, I don't even know what ISIS K even is or what it even means. When Russia fought and defeated ISIS in Syria, everyone understood what ISIS was. I remember reporting on everything that was happening in Syria, And at that time, everyone understood that ISIS, what they were, was an offshoot of Al Qaeda, tasked. They were tasked with overthrowing the Assad government. That was clearly understood. The caliphate, their goal, this Al Qaeda offshoot, moderate rebels, call them whatever you want, this Al Qaeda offshoot, ISIS, their goal was to remove Assad and to create this state, this caliphate, whatever. Everyone understood that. And they had a leadership structure, and everyone knew exactly what ISIS was. And they were defeated. And now you have ISIS-K, which has some connection to Afghanistan, but I mean, I don't know. What is it? I really don't know. ISIS-K, okay, and they have some connection to Afghanistan, okay. The whole thing is just it's like yesterday. No one talked about ISIS. No one knew anything about ISIS-K, and now all of a sudden they have global ambitions, according to the New York Times. Global ambitions. The publication Marianne in France is saying that Macron has tightened up, strengthened his personal security. He's concerned not only about terrorism, but according to Marianne, he put out a quote saying, "Now Russia has decided to attack us ourselves," reports the French magazine Marianne. I don't even know what this quote means, to be quite honest. This must be a bad translation from French. But he's concerned about terrorism, he's concerned about Russia, and basically he's beefing up his personal security. I mean, what Macron should be concerned of is the anger of his own citizens. I mean, that's what Macron should be concerned about. But anyway, that is what the French publication Marianne is reporting. He's beefing up his security because Macron is frightened that something's going to happen to him. So Politico, how are we doing on time here? All right. Politico, they put out an article yesterday with the title "Draft Dodging Plagues Ukraine as Kiev Faces Acute Soldier Shortage." An early burst of patriotic fervor saw draft centers swamped with volunteers, but that has waned with the war in its third year. So Politico is basically saying that the reason Ukrainian men, military-aged men, and non-military aged men, because Politico admits that the average age of fighters is 43 in Ukraine. The average age of a soldier is 43 years old. But basically, Politico is saying in this article that the main reason um, men in Ukraine do not want to go to war, do not want to sign up to be sent to the front lines, is because of the fact that weapons and money has been blocked from getting to the Zelensky regime, and because they're seeing that the money and the weapons are not getting to the Zelensky regime, this is destroying excitement, confidence, morale for the mobilization of troops. That's basically what this Politico article is saying. And they interviewed a Ukrainian man named Artem, and they basically say how Artem has to walk around Kiev when he does get out of his apartment or his home. He walks around with I think they said a baseball hat or sunglasses or something, but or a hoodie, like he puts his hoodie or something like that. They said like he puts his hoodie like that, and he looks down. He tries to avoid eye contact. He tries to avoid metro stations, and when he walks around the corner, he's always looking to see if Zelensky's goons are anywhere around, so he doesn't get apprehended. And he snuck his way to a coffee shop, and he met these political reporters and he gave an interview and talked about his fears about getting sent to the front lines. Anyway, this is what Politico says in their article. Pessimism about the future of the conflict is also taking hold, with ever more people questioning whether Ukraine is capable of defeating Moscow's forces. So it admits that there is indeed a growing pessimism in Ukraine right now, in Kiev, about the trajectory of the conflict. Once upon a time, they actually believed that they were going to defeat Russia because of the collective West and the Ukraine propaganda. They actually bought into the narrative that they can win this war. They never had a chance to win this war. And now the truth is coming out there. This is bad news for the Zelensky regime. Very bad news. The minute the population centers, Kiev, Odessa, Lvov, the minute that they start to believe that this war is lost, the Zelensky regime is in big, big trouble. The article says Ukraine is perilously short, not only of ammunition, especially artillery shells and air defense missiles, but also of soldiers to see off a Russian attack. The average age of Ukraine's frontline soldier is 43, and evidence of draft dodging is mounting. The BBC recently reported that 650,000 Ukrainian men of fighting age have fled the country in the past 2 years, most slipping across the border with Poland and Slovakia, some with false exemption papers allowing them to exit Ukraine despite a ban on fighting age men leaving the country. 650,000 people, according to the BBC, have fled. That's probably a lot more than 650,000 people. Probably a lot more. But yeah, they're running out. The admission that they're running out of weapons, artillery, ammunition, air defense. They're running out of air defense, and they're running out of soldiers. And the average age of a soldier is 43. And the last 2 years, they were telling us that Russia's running out of ammunition. Russia's running out of weapons. Russia's fighting with shovels. Russia can't mobilize. Russia's running out of soldiers. And now they're telling the truth. Now the collective West media is telling the truth because they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice other than to tell the truth because they're losing and they're about to lose, and the Zelensky regime is about to collapse. So they don't have a choice other than tell the truth. Trickle truth. Slowly, slowly, little by little. Trickle, trickle, trickle. Like drops from a faucet. They're starting to reveal what the truth is with regards to Project Ukraine. And in this article, they also mention that the Russians have a huge military, like a massive military, 400,000 troops fighting in the conflict. They have another, I think it said like another 500,000 troops ready and waiting, and another million troops as well, like another million volunteers. I mean, they just put out numbers, huge numbers of the size of the Russian military, and they talk about how the Russian military is cranking out weapons. Quite a turnaround from just a month ago. It was shovels and chips from washing machines. And the Washington Post is telling us that Putin is vulnerable and weak. And now's the time to regime change him. So there were reports over the weekend that Ukraine successfully, this is according to the BBC, as well as other reports on social media, that Ukraine successfully hit 2 landing ships off Crimea. This is according to Ukrainian officials in the missile and drone strikes, a big missile strike targeting Sevastopol, and the reports were that Ukraine, they managed to destroy another 2 more Russian ships that were docked in Crimea. And then satellite imagery came out debunking that claim. And it showed that the ships were absolutely intact. The missiles did hit, I believe they did hit parts of the dock or the port, but no ships were destroyed. And not only did this imagery debunk the claim that 2 ships were destroyed, but the imagery or the commentary, once the imagery came out, even from pro-Ukrainian channels, was that Ukraine had just wasted Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles, which they don't have. They don't have the liberty, the luxury to waste. They just wasted all of these missiles on an attack in Crimea, and it achieved nothing. And now the Zelensky regime is going to have to beg Macron and the UK, Sunak, for more Storm Shadows and more Scalp missiles, which, at least in the case of the UK, they just simply don't have. They don't have the Storm Shadows to give or to spare. So that's the true story as to what happened with the attacks in Sevastopol, in Crimea. The attacks from the Russian missiles in Kharkov, um, very successful. Very successful because it looks like the goal was to knock out the energy infrastructure of Ukraine in the Kharkov region, and it seems like that is exactly what the missiles did with pinpoint accuracy. And it's probably the first time that we've seen the Russian military really target the energy infrastructure in a way that doesn't degrade it, but in a way that aims to permanently disable it. The previous strikes that were targeting the energy infrastructure from a year ago, they were just looking to weaken the Ukraine energy infrastructure. They weren't looking to completely destroy it and send regions in Ukraine into a permanent blackout situation. But in this instance, with Kharkov, it appears that the goal was to destroy the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. And it looks like that's what they did. So let's do a clown world, and we will wrap up this video. And I think everyone knows what today's clown world is going to be, because this video has gone uber viral, of the US Vice President Kamala Harris in Puerto Rico. And Kamala thought that this group of musicians, um, that they were there to greet her, and they were singing a song, and she started to dance and groove to that song and clap to this song that they were singing, and she thought that they were there to praise her and to greet her and to welcome her to Puerto Rico. And then her aide whispered to Kamala, and she let Kamala Harris know that this song is actually protesting you. It's protesting you being here. And Kamala's face when she was told by her aide that this song is not about praising you, but about protesting and criticizing you. Well, you can see from her body language and her facial expression that she did not like it. She did not like it at all, and she stopped clapping and she stopped dancing. And it was very embarrassing for Kamala Harris. But what's new? What is new? Kamala Harris looking silly. If I pull this string, then the bell for the church will ring. I'm not going to do that though, but that string probably should not be accessible to guys like me. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, and Rockfin. And go to the Duran shop. 20% off on all Greek flag merchandise. We're still running that special. So pick up a Greek flag shirt or hoodie or long sleeve to celebrate Greek Independence Day. Take care.